intimacy coordination تنسيق المشاهد الحميمة موضوع مهم جدا في السينما والتلفزيون في هوليوود. ازاي المشاهد الحميمة بتتم؟ ازاي بنجهز الممثلين على المشاهد الحميمة؟ أسئلة هنعرف إجابتها النهاردة في حواري مع واحدة من أهم منسقات المشاهد الحميمة، ريبيكا جوهانسن، اللي اشتغلت مع أسامي كبيرة جدا زي مورغان فريمان، فلورنس بيو، ليلي جيمس، سيباستيان ستان، سيس روجن. Hey Rebecca, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm great, thank you for asking. So Rebecca, thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Sure. So let's start off with you introducing yourself, and in your own words, I want you to tell us what is the duty of an intimacy coordinator.
Yes. Well, I'm Ribecca Johansson. I am been trained by one of the first intimacy coordinators in Hollywood, Amanda Blumenthal. And I have a background actually in theater. I have a PhD in theater, and I taught at programs at NYU, at Fordham University, at Mercy College in New York, at a few other universities in California. And when this came to me, this career came to me, was when I had decided to take a break from academia and was looking for something that merged all of my areas of expertise that I had crafted over the course of my career. And this, when I found out what this job was from Amanda, I realized that this was very much a perfect fit for what the experiences I'd had in life up to that point. And so the role of an intimacy coordinator is anytime a film or a television show has any kind of nudity or simulated sex, sometimes productions call us in for even smaller kinds of intimacy, like if a younger performer is going to have their first on-camera kiss. Sometimes they'll call us in just to make sure that they're comfortable, that they understand what the process is that's going to happen around them, and to help calm their nerves. So what we do is we coordinate with multiple departments to make sure that anytime a scene of nudity or simulated sex takes place, that all of the actors involved feel safe, that they are not going to have any boundaries crossed, that they're not going to be asked to do something that they're not comfortable doing, and that they are afforded as much privacy on set as possible, and that it's an ongoing conversation between us, that if something happens while we're filming that makes the actor uncomfortable, it's then the intimacy coordinator's job to work that out between the performers and the director to make sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable. And occasionally we get asked to choreograph the scenes as well.
So what does choreographing a scene mean?
It means figuring out what the best way to stage the intimate moment between the performers to keep them safe, so that they're not actually touching in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, to make sure that there are barriers between them, so that it is simulated, it's not real. And figuring out where the camera angle is to sometimes be the most flattering for the performers, or to get across the feeling that the director wants for the scene.
Right. So do you ever read the intimate scene in the script before they start shooting?
Yes, absolutely. What we usually do when we come onto a project is they'll send us over the script, or multiple scripts if it's a television series, and we read through them to identify any scene that could possibly have any kind of intimacy or nudity. And then we meet with the director is the next step in the process. And sometimes the cinematographer will be on that call as well. Sometimes it's just you and the director. And we'll go through each of those scenes that we've identified, and the director shares with us what his or her vision for the scene would be, if they could have anything that they want, if the actors would be willing to do anything that they want, what would they like that scene to look like? And then the next step is we have individual meetings with each of the actors involved in those scenes. And we describe to them what the director's vision is, and they can share with us then in that private meeting if they have any concerns, if they're uncomfortable doing something that the director has described. And then we communicate that conversation back to the director so that the director's prepared for what the performer is comfortable doing. And they might have to readjust their vision for the scene based on what the performers are willing to do. And then from there, we coordinate with all the departments to make sure that it goes as smoothly as possible on the day.
Right. So have you ever changed the way that an intimate scene was written in the script?
I collaborate with directors and actors, and very often what's described in the script and what actually gets filmed end up being very different. But that's usually because it's a conversation between the director and the actors and myself, sometimes myself. And it's always a choice that's driven by what feeling they want to get across in that moment. And sometimes it looks different than the way that it's described in the script. And sometimes scripts don't give you very much detail.
Oh, okay.
They just give a general direction and then leave it up to the director and the actors to create whatever vision they want for it, depending on, where the characters are in that moment, what the relationship is between the characters, and those kinds of pieces of information.
So do you recall a situation in which actors were made uncomfortable while shooting the scene?
Yes, honestly, with this role in film, we prevent a lot of that from happening because we're able to talk about it in the moment. And I have had performers express to me, I really don't want to do another take of this. Can we tell the director that he gets one more take? And then I'm done. And so I'm the one that has to break the bad news to the director that he gets one more shot, and that's it.
So how do the directors react usually to those situations?
Honestly, most directors want their actors to trust them and to feel comfortable in the moment. Sometimes they get a little upset in the moment because they know they're not going to be able to, they really have to perfect that final take. But that's the importance of me telling them rather than the actor, so that I get to see their immediate disappointment and the actor doesn't have to feel that pressure.
So you're like a hero to them. You're like there to protect them the whole time, right?
Yeah. I've had actors call me their angel.
I love that.
Because I take the director's disappointment, not the actor.
Okay, so this is a really important job. How long has there been intimacy coordinators in Hollywood?
Not long enough.
Yes,
the role really started to become a common practice in America in 2017. And it's grown considerably since then. And there are now intimacy coordinators trained all over the world, and other countries that are trying to start implementing the same kinds of practices that we have here in the US and in England.
So what do you think would happen without an intimacy coordinator? Like back in the day when there wasn't intimacy coordinators, how would people prepare the actors for the intimate moments?
Yeah, I've had actors share with me some really, really traumatizing experiences where they were pushed into doing something that they weren't really comfortable doing because they didn't feel like they could tell the director no. I've had actors share with me really terrible things that have gone wrong with modesty garments, that they were, modesty garments are the pieces that we put on to the actors to make sure that they're not completely nude if they don't want to be nude, and we can just create the illusion of it, and to give them barriers between each other. And I've had actors share when those have malfunctioned and they've been put into a situation that was very uncomfortable. I've had, the worst part is when nobody talks about it until they start to shoot. And so actors don't have any idea what the director is going to expect them to do. But we've really strengthened a lot of the union regulations here in the United States. So any production that films under our actors union contract, SAG-AFTRA, has to adhere to guidelines for filming of those scenes, including informing the performers at least 48 hours in advance of shooting the scene what is going to be expected of them and what we're allowed and not allowed to film.
So that one rule that you just said, the one where the makers have to inform the actors 48 hours before shooting that there would be an intimate scene. For how long has that rule existed?
Just since last year, mid 2020 is when that contract was renegotiated, and we were able to fight for that extra bit. Sometimes if a performer decides that they want to reveal something in a scene within that 48-hour window, if it's driven by them and they can convince their lawyers and their representatives that they want to do it, then sometimes we have a little bit of leeway with that, but we really stick really hard to that 48-hour rule.
So you mentioned that intimacy coordinators started working in Hollywood starting from 2017. Would you say that the rise of the Me Too movement is what caused this to happen?
Yes, absolutely. I think the more stories were shared and the more people felt comfortable coming forward and sharing their experiences, that really drove the need to create safer environments on set. And with a lot of the production studios now, they see the liability in not having somebody in that role, that it helps prevent a lot of harassment from happening, helps prevent miscommunication. And we find that a lot of the studios have mandated that intimacy coordinators will be on all of their productions. It's not a union rule yet, but the movement has moved so far forward that production studios see the impact and the reduction in liability on set by hiring us. Studios have implemented policies like Netflix, Amazon, HBO, Showtime, Apple TV Plus, all of those streaming services that produce their own content. They all have internal mandates, but it's not required industry-wide. It's just considered a best practice rather than a requirement. But we find that almost every production now is getting on board.
Right. So I've watched some of your projects, like Pretty Smart. So this is a funny, project, right?
Yes.
Do you take that into account while working on an intimate scene? Like, I need that scene to be funny. It's not a normal intimate moment. Do you take that into account?
Yeah. I've actually worked on a number of comedies, and the process is always the same, though. The performers themselves are funny and the scripts are funny. So whenever I'm approaching working on a comedy, I find that the more I can create that safe environment for them, the more they can do their job and be funny. I do offer some suggestions sometimes for whatever the quality of the scene should be. We talk a lot in our training programs and our choreography courses about what's the intention behind this scene. Is it romantic? Is it passionate? Is it is it more aggressive? And comedy is definitely one of those categories. Is it funny? And how do you make things funny? And there's a few different ways that you can do that, but that my job in those moments is always to make sure that the actors feel safe and that they feel like they know exactly what the boundaries are that they can cross and what they can't. And I trust them to be funny.
Right. So have you ever had a clash with a director with the way, because of the way that you interfered in the making of the scene?
I do. I've definitely worked with directors who do not want my input in those moments. And I've worked with directors that very much want me to be involved in that process. I usually try to find that out before we get on set so that both of us have a clear expectation of what's going to happen when I arrive. So when I have that first meeting with the director, I usually ask them how they want to work with me when I'm on set. And I give them a few different options for how we can work together if they've never worked with an intimacy coordinator before. So that way we have a really clear understanding of what's going to happen when I get to set and how involved or uninvolved I'm going to be in that process. And I always let them know that the performers have a say in that as well, that if the performers want me to be more heavily involved, then I'm happy to step in and be a resource to everybody. Some directors are very comfortable staging simulated sex scenes, and a lot of actors really trust their director and they want to create that together. And I'm in those moments, I can be seen as somebody interfering in that process. And I've learned to just sit back and make sure all of the other pieces are put into place. Like the set is closed, they've got all the garments they need, they've got set costumers ready to give them a robe as soon as we yell cut. But sometimes when I work on a television series, we have rotating directors. We have a different director for every episode or every couple of episodes. And in those situations, I'm the constant for the actors. I'm the one that they are always working with in those scenes. And sometimes they like to have my input a little bit more.
Right. So has there ever been a situation like do the actors sometimes require the crew members to exit the set for them to feel more comfortable?
Yes, we have very strict protocols around that, also regulated by the union, that when we are filming these scenes, we go into a mode that's called a closed set. And that means that all non-essential personnel, people who are not essential to the filming of the scene, have to step away from the set, and they cannot be near a monitor to view what's happening in the room. So we scale it down to only those people who are absolutely necessary to be there. And then we also make sure that there's no still photography happening in the room. I don't allow any crew member to have a cell phone in their hand.
Amazing.
Yeah, because they might just be checking their email, but the performers don't know that. The performers might think that they are taking a picture of them in the moment. And then we always cut off the streaming of the video to any external people watching on the monitors.
Right.
So like some business executive in an office somewhere can't just pull up the feed and see what's going on in the room during a closed set. And then we always make sure that we do have someone ready to cover them with some kind of covering, like a robe or a towel or something, as soon as we're done filming the scene, the take.
But let's say one actor is more comfortable than the other. Is it usually obvious that this one has worked on these scenes a lot and this is his first time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does happen. And in those cases, I usually like to talk to the more experienced performer when I have my one-on-one meeting with them, and just let them know, hey, I know that you have done this a lot, and I know you're very experienced and you're very comfortable. Your co-star, this is the first time they're ever doing something like this. So let's have a conversation about how we're going to move forward with the scenes. And usually in those situations, the more experienced performer is very, very, very caring and takes really good care of the newer performer to the process, and can be my ally in that moment too, to help build an atmosphere of trust with the less experienced performer. Right.
So another project of yours that I've watched in full is Pam and Tommy. And part of what makes this interesting is that it's based on a true story. Was it your duty to make sure that the scenes that the intimate scenes in that show were similar to that in the original tape that the show is based on?
I actually was not the lead coordinator on that show. I just filled in on set for a few days. I was there for some of the more important, some important moments, but I really can't speak to the process for any particular production. I can only speak in general. Oftentimes when we are approaching any script, We do a lot of research if it's necessary for what's described in the context of the script, so that we can provide directors with a number of different options. We very heavily research source material if that's what we're required to do.